Hello, everyone, and welcome back for day 2 of the WCEF+Climate Conference 2021. My name is Ikenna Azuike. Now, this session is dedicated fully to a demographic I sadly parted way with some time ago, the youth. But I intend to soak up the energy and glow of our guests today so that in around an hour's time, I'll look at least 20 years younger, guaranteed. All right? Before we kick off today's program, let's watch a quick recap from day 1 of the conference. This is WCEF+Climate, the World Circular Economy Forum.
We need to design for a better future right from the start.
And I think if we do this together, we can actually make the decade of action happen.
Circularity starts with our own household.
If you still insist on doing it the non-circular way, you need to explain to your consumers why.
We have a goal to generate 180,000 new green jobs in the booming recycle industry.
When you think about sustainable development, the notion of a circular economy is integral to it.
To avoid pollution, but also to avoid impacting the lives and livelihoods of people that had nothing to do with all of this.
There's actually only one concept you need to remember, and that is we need to learn to live within planetary boundaries.
The first piece of plastic that was ever produced is still out there, and we can change that.
Joining me in the studio for today's session are Stientje van Veldhoven, thank you very much, Dutch Minister for Environment, and Aniek Moonen. Have I pronounced it? Is it Moonen or Moonen?
Depends which country, which language you're speaking. Moonen is fine.
Okay. Aniek Moonen, a board member from the Dutch Youth Climate Movement. And we'll be doing some musical chairs later, and you'll sit at the table, and the other guest that we've got here will go back into the stands. But
yeah.
Minister van Veldhoven, let's start with you. What a great recap video. Did yesterday live up to your expectations?
Absolutely. I think all the important points were made yesterday, and I'm really looking forward to all of the concrete illustrations today of how we can impact. But the planetary boundaries, the fact that it creates 180,000 jobs, the fact that the old normal is actually abnormal and circular is going to be the new normal. All of these issues were underlined. Janez Potočnik also had a great session in the International Resources panel. So I think it was a very rich session yesterday. But we're doing this, of course, for future generations. And that's why I'm so happy that today we will focus very much also on the participation of young people. Yep. It is their future that we are deciding today. Yep. So we cannot do that without them.
Great, very clear. Now, the Minister and Aniek will be with us throughout the session today, and there'll be plenty of other guests too. So to everybody watching, please don't hesitate to ask questions via the Ask the Speaker button. You've been doing really well at doing that, so keep going. And for those on Twitter, please use the WCEF+Climate hashtag to join our conversation. Okay, our first talking point of the session is sustainable fashion industry, and we have a tremendous guest to do that with, Anne-Lieke van Leeuwen, who is responsible for the business development at Zazi Vintage. Welcome, Anne-Lieke.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for inviting me today.
You're very welcome. Yeah. Let's start off by telling us what makes Zazi Vintage a circular brand.
So let me explain first, maybe for everyone who doesn't know Zazi, because that's probably the first start. So Zazi started from a love for craftsmanship, artisanal craftsmanship. So not necessarily calling ourselves a circular brand on per se, but everything we create is created with a lot of love and a lot of attention to the maker. Mm-hmm. So the fashion industry has many, many layers, and everyone who's working in it will know the complexity of it, especially when you talk about circular economy, for example. We're almost on all different layers, from transport to the seeds that we use. Yeah. And at Zazi, we take a lot of attention at all those different steps of creating a garment, whether this is from using materials that are already there to working closely with the farmers, working closely with amazing people who do natural dyes, to telling the stories of their artisanal communities, so that you feel connected to your garment when you're actually wearing it. And all the different steps, doing that in full transparency, so to say.
Yeah, Zazi really has this focus on the makers, of course.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to know some of your makers. We have a short video that introduces us to the Zazi vintage makers.
Thank you.
Mahalliy tilda abirband deb ataymiz. Bu bulutni bog'lash degan ma'noni bildiradi. Ikat abrli matolar tayyorlash 37 ta jarayondan iborat. Kalaba holat olganimizdan keyin davrakashga, davrakashdan qapchiga, qapdan keyin chizuvga va manga, ya'ni bo'yoq jarayoniga. Tabiiy bo'yoqlarda bo'yaladi asosiy jarayon. Bunda biz o'simliklardan foydalangan holatda bo'yab chiqamiz. Keyin gula, ya'ni gulada shu tug'uga tayyorlash. Holat va bunda albatta matoning go'zal chiqishi mana shu insonlarning qo'lida mehr bilan tayyorlanganiga bog'liq. Men ismim Azizbek, men ikat dizayneri hamda tabiiy bog'lar ustasiman.
20 yoshdan beri shu ish bilan shug'ullanaman. 3 nafar farzandim bor. Shu qo'l do'konda to'qiymiz, ustasiga 50-60 metrdan ish beramiz. Mana xonatlasimiz qadimgi ota-bobolarimizdan qolgan meros. Bu milliy kiyimlarimiz, qirollarimiz oilasi, qirolichalar ham kiyishgan. Men qilayotgan hunarimdan xursandman. Qilayotgan ishimizni o'zimiz ham yaxshi ko'ramiz, davom ettiramiz. Mening ismim Gulnoza, men to'quvchiman.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned earlier, I've seen that video already, but every single time I watch it again, it doesn't stop. It just touches you, because these people are clearly putting a lot of love, a lot of warmth into their clothes. So I think it's a fantastic job you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, they're the true heroes in the story, right? We're just communicating all this beautiful craftsmanship. And it's such an intricate process of, well, you saw all the different steps. It's 37 in total. So there's so much love and work that goes into it of creating this actual garment. And this is one of our partners that we work with in Uzbekistan, and which is also the place where this craftsmanship originally comes from.
Yeah. Now you've brought some Zazi vintage items of clothing here with you. Thank you very much. Did you bring the rack as well? It's very impressive work. In the backpack.
On the train.
Exactly. Let's go and have a look.
Yeah, let me show you
and
something.
Before we do, actually, Stientje, I understand you are wearing a piece of Zazi fashion
yes,
at the moment.
I am.
Let's admire it. Those are the trousers?
Yes, these are the trousers. And I mean, all of the pride of the people that you see in the video working on these beautiful garments, it's actually, you feel that when you wear these trousers. So thank you so much for this very inspiring movie and for bringing all of these very inspiring people together in these beautiful clothing. So fantastic.
And Anne-Lieke, can you even pinpoint then who made these?
So it's always, when you have this whole process, they have 25 people who are working on the complete process of it.
Yeah.
So everyone has their own specialization, so to say. So you have the person who actually creates the pattern, then you have the person who binds the threads together.
Yeah.
Then you have the person who dyes it and who prepares the looms. And then you have the ladies who are actually weaving it at home while they are feeding their babies and cooking the dinner, etc.
Yeah.
And it brings me a lot of joy when you say that you feel the love in it, because I think that's the relationship you need to have with your clothing.
Yeah.
That you can keep it for many years and can cherish it.
Absolutely.
And that's what we try to do with all garments.
The total opposite of the fast fashion industry, isn't it? It's exactly in all ways the opposite. And also, if you have such a garment, you feel you want to take care of it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, of course, what we need to do. We need to take care of the environment and the way we consume and produce.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic example.
Yeah.
But let's have a look at these. Can you tell us, where did these different items come from? This is a very impressive coat.
So we work in different regions. So the ikat is quite what you're also wearing. Yeah. That's of the video you saw, that process. These are actually made in Afghanistan. So we work with this beautiful family of who've been having this craft for years from the traditional Afghan coat. So when you ask your moms or your dad, they will tell you that they recognize it straight away. And this family, they have been vintage traders for generation to generation.
Yeah.
And they have these beautiful fabrics. And this is actually a Suzani piece. And Suzani is Persian for needlework. So this originates from a specific region in Tajikistan. And what you see is that it's always on a white, and then it has the black on it. And it has, when you see the back, it has gorgeous flowers on it. It shows like flowers. And Suzani always has a meaning because it's actually a piece of fabric that you give to the bride when she gets married for her dowry. And she wears it like a sleeve over it. And the moms, they make it like the wishes you want to give to your daughter, so to say.
I mean, it's a beautiful story, but these are very expensive jackets, right?
They are.
But
because they take so much time to make. So when you pay fair for the needlework, when you pay fair for the actual materials, the transport, the people who are actually bringing it together, the import of bringing it to Europe, of course, and all the different layers of paying everyone fairly. Yeah. And then at the same time, we also say, cherish it and love it for many years to come.
But what do we do with people who literally can't afford to pay for a coat like this now? What do we tell them?
I mean, it's something we are thinking about as well, right? How can we make it more accessible? Yeah. And we're a luxury brand, so we decided to have really special items that are made with so much love. But of course, there are also a lot of items that are more accessible to the mainstream, so to say. But they're still created with a lot of love and still created with circularity in mind. Yeah. And these are, of course, really statement pieces, so to say. So there are different ways of...
Sure.
And what I found very interesting is I was speaking to one of the lower price brands in the Netherlands, one which is literally tries to be accessible for everybody. And they said that, for example, what they are doing is try to produce clothing which is, let's say, which are basic pieces. So that you combine those basic pieces. They don't change with every season, but you can wear them for a long time because they stay in fashion. And you can always combine them with the fashion items of the season, but therefore you can wear them for a long time and you don't need to reinvest every season in new clothing, even if you want to follow fashion a little bit. So it's also, you see that all kinds of fashion brands are actually thinking, what can I contribute with the market that I serve on making fashion more sustainable? And it's so crucial.
I mean, there are clearly companies doing really good work, but there are also very big, very polluting companies, the fast fashion companies. We know the names, H&M and Primark. What is wrong with the fast fashion system then?
I mean, so we look at individual companies, but it's a system at itself, right? It's not knowing who your suppliers are, from maybe knowing the first people who are actually sewing the garments, but not knowing all the layers before that, so to say. So a big part of it has to do with the transparency of it all and knowing where your things are coming from. But then also operating in a system where it's like a red wheel, so to say. So you're sort of pushing all these collections out there and making it as cheap as possible just to sustain your business, so to say. And it's built on just creating a lot of stuff.
But there's also companies that take a very different
conversation
model.
at the chair.
Yeah, sure.
And there are different ways, of course.
We also see companies taking a very different approach. Two examples: Skype Textiles. They are a family-owned business that has been making work clothing for I think 100 years, and they decided to go circular. And they understood that they could never do that alone, so they are working with their Turkish mill and their Pakistani weavery to jointly define and create and improve the fabric, which is now 100% circular, and that's the only thing they sell. So if a client comes up to them and says, I'm not interested in circularity, then they say, you're not our client. So I think that's very powerful. And this is a relatively small enterprise. It's not one of those big, but they produce a lot. And then on the other hand, we have things like the denim deal, where a group of companies said, okay, we cannot change 100% from today till tomorrow. But we are going to make a statement. We're going to make 3 million jeans, which are going to be produced fully circularly. And we are also going to integrate 5% of circular materials in every jean that we produce, thereby also bringing about a change in that international chain. And that is where I think, partnering and enabling, helping, but also demanding change from other partners can be very, very strong. That's exactly also what you are doing. So I think working in this change is really crucial. And if you think about the pollution in textiles, it's 10% of CO2. It is all international shipping, all international flights and maritime shipping combined.
The largest emitter after the oil industry you mentioned yesterday.
Yeah.
Aniek, you had a question for Anne-Lieke.
Yeah. I think it's such a good initiative that you see all of these smaller luxury brands coming to sell circular and sustainable fashion. And I was wondering what your view is on exactly these fast fashion chains that are trying to make change and are maybe more and more using the label sustainable for their own brands. Do you see these big chains as part of the, let's call it the revolution? Or do you think we need to transition to a system where all of our clothing needs to come from smaller stores?
I mean, it's a big question. I would not portray them necessarily as saying like they're the bad guys, so to say, because we have so many different customers and you have so many different solutions to a problem. And we know that our garments are not attracted to everyone or not available for everyone as well. So I think there's a lot happening, and I think a lot of initiatives, etc. I think, yeah, it's not a one.
Stientje, what could the government be doing to incentivize the bigger fashion brands to become more sustainable?
Well, we're trying to bring them together in things like the circular deal. And I think yesterday we talked about the need to work towards, let's say, a mandatory amount of recycled plastics in plastic products. And I think for textiles too, we need to work towards starting to reuse our textiles. And I think there's lots of different ways in which you can do that. You can buy clothing that was somebody's misfit, and it can be your jewel. I also try that every now and then. You can start to reuse the materials that you have. So I think as a government, we must try to incentivize parties to go into that direction. Convening power is always very important as a government, but also regulation at some point can really play a role, like we discussed yesterday with plastics. But it is interesting to see that also the larger brands, I think, are starting to get aware of the need to change. And this denim deal, for example, is a great example of large companies that have said, we're going to make the change. We cannot change 100% overnight, but we are taking our steps, and this is the one direction that we're going.
And do they contact brands like yours for knowledge, for insights as to, or is that not how?
Not necessarily, but I think there is a lot of knowledge exchange happening. I mean, this topic has been in the fashion industry for a long time. I think they know the problems, and now that everyone is becoming more aware and also sharing their voice, it's becoming more urgent to change it as well. So
and also this new generation of fashion students as well. Sustainability seems to be just
we get many
of the course.
Contacted by
so
students
normal.
And young people, so to say. And for us, it's all about sharing the stories of our artisans, and sharing knowledge with them. So we don't necessarily focus on big quantities or etc. But if they want to work with artisans, we're always there to help, of course.
Good. Okay, well, that sparked lots of interesting discussion, and you're going to stay with us throughout, so that's fantastic. And now it's time to invite two virtual panelists to join us. They themselves are not virtual, but they're on screen, so they're virtual. The first one is Victor Boyle-Komolafe. Have I pronounced that correctly, Victor? No, he's giving me this. Okay, he's the co-founder of Garbage in Value Out, based in Nigeria, and Ernest Nartey-Tetteh, who's the director of operations of Eazywaste in Ghana. First of all, let's go to you, Victor. What does your company do? Are you on mute, perhaps? No, unfortunately, we've got some audio problems. We can't hear you, Victor. I hope you didn't do that because I pronounced your name incorrectly. No, we've got some audio problems. Okay, we'll try and fix those audio problems. And in the meantime, I will go to Ernest. Ernest, perhaps you can kick us off. What does your company do? Oh, are you on mute as well, or have we got audio connection problems? Well, we do definitely have audio connection problems. That's a shame. Okay, can we test those offline? And as soon as those are fixed, we'll hear from you, okay? But it is great. I mean, I know in my lifetime, we had a conversation briefly yesterday, Stientje, for the last, 5 to 10 years maybe even, I've been a lot more aware of the need to buy sustainably, and definitely the last 5 years, that's the only fashion that I buy is sustainable. And I find one of the kind of side benefits is because there aren't that many places to shop for it, at least affordable for me, it's really like, it's much easier because you can just go and find what you want, exactly where you have to go. But there are more and more of these brands popping up.
Absolutely. There are more and more opportunities. And one of the things that I find really beneficial is I like to buy things that fit me. Not necessarily the fashion of the moment. And if you buy things that fit you, you can wear them for much longer. And that is, of course, one of the elements of a circular economy, is trying to use things much longer. If you think that the average piece of clothing is worn for 1 week, can you imagine the amount of waste that we are creating unnecessarily? So I think indeed trying to see how secondhand, pre-owned, pre-loved, I think is a wonderful term, clothing can find a way into our system. You actually see large companies starting to work with that as well, which I find a great idea, because these were already once produced and can then have a beautiful second life, while also being a business model. I think they're trying to reconnect, see if that works. But I don't hear you yet. I'm so sorry. We're very much anxious to hear from you. So we hope it gets fixed really quickly.
But there are lots of, you mentioned different business models. There's a lot of innovation in this space. Aniek, do you know of any, are there companies with particularly interesting ways of selling their clothes or getting their clothes to customers that you're a fan of? I know Mud Jeans, they lease their jeans, don't they?
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea.
Well, you see those popping up, especially in the bigger cities in the Netherlands. They call themselves clothing libraries.
Yes.
I think those are great initiatives, especially when it comes to more luxury items. I think we're all used to having, for instance, an event like this. You need an outfit, but you're probably only going to wear it once or twice. It's such a waste to then buy an entire outfit to only wear it once or twice. And I think those clothing libraries are a great way for men and women to lease an outfit for maybe a week, and then you just bring it back and they can rent it out to someone else.
It's really amazing. I wore one of the dresses of a library at one of the openings of our parliamentary years. And they also give opportunities to young Dutch designers to also allow them to spread, let's say, their beautiful collection that might not have been sold at the start, but to have it in those libraries where they also have a bigger audience. So it's really a fantastic concept. And I think these kind of ideas, indeed, those luxury garments that you don't necessarily wear every week to work, but you do want to have them every now and then. It's a beautiful way of sharing those beautiful pieces.
And let's talk about circularity in the fashion industry in the broader sense. You focus on the making side of things, but what does but there are also aspects which are kind of, how does circularity in the fashion industry impact climate change? And there are aspects of the work that you do, for instance, with flowers, for instance. Can you elaborate on that?
when you create a garment, there are many decisions you need to make, like what type of materials are you going to work with? How are you going to dye them? Because the colors, these colors, they don't just appear from nowhere, So all those decisions you need to make. And we try to do that as much in harmony with nature as possible. So we work, for example, when you have that dress, the orange one that you see, it's 2 young sisters, and they take flowers from the offerings because they live in India. And you have many flowers that are being offered. And they take the waste of it, and they use that to dye, actually, our garments and our fabrics. So those are all creative ways that you can work with what is already there. In this case, flowers for offerings.
Okay, so you're doing great work, you and lots of other brands, but you want to grow. You mentioned it before. You want to expand to Ghana and elsewhere in the world. You have a very influential, high-level politician sitting next to you. Explain, what do you want from her?
I mean, I think for us, it's mainly having the right measures in place to actually have the sustainable businesses grow, right? And a big part of that is, how do you measure and how do you say what is sustainable? Because like we said, there's so many different.
But there are labels
models,
out there, the bio-cotton labels, there seem to be no shortage of.
I mean, there are many
certifications
and labels, but for example, like a brand as Zazi, there are many difficult things as well about certifications, because certifications are really expensive as well. So smallholder farmers, they don't necessarily are able to afford certifications. So there are just multiple layers of complexity when you talk about these sort of issues, so to say. And I think there's a lot of happening on the EU as well, on policy, etc., especially focus on the fashion industry, because it is so big and so impactful. And what you see is a big question is, okay, how do you measure the impact of the fashion industry?
Yeah, we do keep coming back to the importance of metrics.
Metrics is really, really crucial. If you want to be able to define if you're making enough progress, also you need to be able you need to know what you want to measure. And as long as you don't really have a good set of indicators, you can also not really see where the differences are or how far you've gone already. So I think metrics is really, really, really crucial. And also I think bringing partners together, because we discussed that yesterday too. If you bring partners together, then jointly they can move faster and further. And for example, one of the things we did in the Netherlands is the Circular Economy Accelerator Portal, the Versnellingshuis. I talked about it yesterday a little bit. And there we also try all those people that have part of the solution. By bringing them together, you can create a total solution. And labels are absolutely, I think, part of the solution. But the funny thing is that labels are sometimes also a problem. If you look at recycling clothing, then the one element in those clothes that now poses a problem for recycling them is the label, because it's a different material.
No.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's one of the very small things that we can change very easily. Get rid of that label, just print it on the fabric itself, and we can circulate much more and much easier, because you don't have to have somebody cutting out that piece of cloth so that you can recycle the rest. So it's these kind of innovative solutions that also come from entrepreneurs that say, this is where my problem is. If you can solve that, then we can.
And are smaller brands facing the same sort of obstacles as the bigger fashion houses? Because I mean, you were very diplomatic in your answer about the big fashion houses, but wouldn't they be the ones who maybe want to slow down the process of creating metrics?
No, I don't think anybody has a reason to slow down, but it is complicated and it takes time. And also, there are many. You can have many discussions on what are the right metrics. But I think overall, everything we need is out there, and we need to start to agree on what are the indicators that we're going to use. And you can also have a set of, let's say, to have and the impact on water and the impact on CO2 and the impact on pollution. That's all very important. And then also, depending perhaps on where you want to make your contribution as a brand, you can choose where do I want to focus most. So it's not either or. I think it's important to have all of those elements because they are all crucial in getting to this sustainable world.
Okay. Now, it looks as though we're going to try again with Victor and Ernest. Can you say something, both of you?
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Niger internet don't work.
It's not Niger internet, by the way. Something is wrong in your studio.
Okay, good. So the internet's all great. Listen, let's start with you then, Victor. Ghana's bigger brother in Nigeria. Just teasing, Ernest. Tell me, what does your company do?
Yeah, hi. So at GIVO, Garbage in Value Out, what we try to do is leverage on advanced technology to aggregate recyclables directly from waste generators, so in this individuals and businesses. And in modular facilities located in those communities, we process those recyclables into consumer and industrial goods. Again, it's a very tech-heavy process, but this is a summary.
So the recyclable bits that you pull out could end up in what sorts of products are we talking about?
Brilliant. So actually in the last year, in response to COVID, we've been making a lot of PPE, so face shields and face masks. Again, we started that to really show the concept of circularity in an African context. And yeah, we have since moved on to other things like flower pot, abacus toys, and now moving more into building material, in the long term.
And what drove you to? I mean, did you just think, okay, we heard it yesterday from a vice president of the African Development Bank that on the African continent, there's $3.2 billion worth of waste just sitting there, waiting for someone to make the most of its potential. Did you spot that? Did you think 3.2 billion? That sounds like a piece of a pie I want to taste.
Yeah, I mean, 3.2 billion sounds yummy, but no, that's not how we got in. We had a background in technology. We have a background in technology, and we got invited by one of the larger multinational FMCG because we were trying to find a solution to the plastic waste problem. And for us, I mean, coming from a tech perspective, we're able to see a lot more opportunities in there. So yes, the waste is one part, but the data from the waste is probably a big opportunity. And so for us, that is where we play. So yes, we're a waste management company. We deal with waste, but the data is the most important thing. The output, the products, is again the second most important thing. The waste management is, it's a means to an end, I guess.
Very, very interesting. Okay, let's go to you, Ernest. Please tell us what your company Eazywaste does. Oh, I thought you were standing very still. Ernest is unfortunately frozen. Tell us then, Victor, the challenges that you faced in growing. It sounds as though you're making a lot of progress. You're collecting all of this data. What's stopping additional growth?
Yeah. Thanks. I think for us, again, being in Africa, the major challenge for growth, or the major obstacle, is really there needs to be a cultural shift, right? So there isn't enough education regarding recycling and the benefits, and even how to, right? So how do you recycle? A lot of people are not aware of that. What are the effects of recycling or not recycling, right? Again, this also has a lot to do with the government policy, but let's never go into that. But there has to be a drastic cultural shift to make this a sustainable and long-term viable business in Africa.
So how do we change that? How do we get more people involved? How do we get more education? How do we learn people about the benefits that they can create in their own environment and accessories also for the world? But how do we get that going?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's a very good question. So I think, yes, there's the government policy side of things. There's policies that could be more intentional around it. So for example, I'll give an instance in Nigeria, right? The value of recyclable materials are ridiculously low, right? And again, that doesn't really encourage, or that doesn't really incentivize individuals to recycle, right? So there is a basic, again, if you're trying to change behavior, you need incentives, right? But if the value of the products are low, then how can you incentivize that behavioral change? So again, there is a policy problem there, and that's a lot of angles to it. So so that's just an example. And so for us, what we really try to do, like I mentioned, we had to go into the waste management sector, and it was really because we know that for us to have a chance of long-term success, we have to do all this ourselves. We have to educate, we have to incentivize, and we have to do it continuously. And so that is why we choose to work in a modular format, where within communities we're able to educate, incentivize, and provide waste management services for them. So we're doing the job of the government, and to make our business easier, I guess.
You're living the Nigerian hustle, sounds like. Okay, Ernest, tell me, you joined us. Hopefully we've got better connection now. What does your company Eazywaste in Ghana do?
So basically what Eazywaste does in Ghana is we are creating a ground-up community-based recycling centers to provide a proximity for communities to recycle all types of plastic waste that they generate after they consume plastic packaged products. So we locate ourselves strategically right within.
Oh, what a shame. I don't know if we're going to get you back, but it sounded so promising. I wanted to know to what extent data is also a part of your business model. But you know what we'll do now is I'd like to introduce a couple of other speakers who will give us from another angle. They might be able to tell us how we can shift the cultural perception, the importance of waste management, let's hear from them. They're two youth representatives, Celiwe Shivambu from South Africa and Shikhar Argarwal from India. Are you able to join us? Yes. Celiwe, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think hopefully the internet is nicer to me today. Thank you so much for joining us and for the invite as well. And I think I would like to start off from the question that
hold on 1 second, Celiwe. Celiwe, I just wanted to, I love your enthusiasm, you want to get going, but there's a particular question I'd like to kick off with, which relates to a partnership that you all are involved in, because you work in climate change and the circular economy, and you're both aligned to the We Are Tomorrow Global Partnership. And I'd like to kick off by finding out a little bit more about that. So go ahead, Celiwe, and then we'll go to you, Shikhar.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the We Are Tomorrow Global Partnership is a partnership with representing young people in Europe and in Africa. And basically, because at Youth at SAIIA, I'm the focal points person for the climate change working group. And we found it very important to work with other young people because collaboration and partnership is the only way that we can have active climate action in our communities. So that's what the global partnership is all about. It's about young people forming alliance, coming together to ensure that we are the future that we live in tomorrow is a climate just future. And of course, we are our tomorrow. So it's only us that we can do it. So yeah, it's just an alliance of young people trying to make the world a better place.
Let me bring in Shikhar here. I mean, you've got TikTok, young people, you've got Instagram. Why do you need another partnership? Come on.
Yeah, those are great options, I think, for someone who wants to maybe make an impact in the world. We should rule nothing out. But I think what's special about We Are Tomorrow Global Partnerships is that it's creating a network of mutual aid between groups of young people who really want to make tangible policy impact in their companies, in their countries, and maybe companies' aspirations to proceed towards a more circular, a more just, a more ecologically sound world.
Can you give me some example of the tangible impacts that the partnership has is working on, or better still, has it already achieved?
Right. I think it's at two levels. At the international level, the partnership has managed to sort of facilitate co-learning, co-sharing. How can we work together on co-creating visions of what we want the future to look like? So that's more at the international level. And then locally, I think the partnership has enabled us to access resources, capacity building, ways of approaching problems that have enabled us to do more, let's say, get more diversity and representation in the plans that we want to create, in the policies that we want to propose to our governments that center youth in decision making and in co-creating the processes that we need. To survive.
Let me bring in Aniek. I saw you nodding there, agreeing to the ambition of, or the explanation that you work on co-learning and co-sharing of knowledge. But I'm still missing a little bit of tangible action.
Right. No, that's understandable. I think as the We Are Tomorrow Global Partnership, as Shikhar said, it's all about learning from each other's experiences, right? So as of for 5 years ago now, so 2016, as the Youth Climate Movement, we've been trying here in the Netherlands to have an impact on the climate debate and be involved. And a lot of our partners have been doing the same for the past couple of years. And it's about the connection that we make and to exchange these ideas and lessons learned in that process.
What have you learned from Celiwe?
Well, for instance, in South Africa, they've had an amazing impact on the local politicians, and they have been structurally involved in the policy debate.
Okay, so Celiwe, Which politician have you had an impact on? Who's listening to you?
I think it's the Minister of our Environment and Fisheries, Minister Barbara Creasy. After a long conversation with her, the department was able to launch the Green Fund, which funded a lot of youth-led organizations in and around South Africa. And that was through, our efforts and discussions with the minister that the Green Fund was released and young people were able to carry on working in their communities with their projects already funded by the ministry. Thank you.
No, very
But it is
clear.
a good question that you ask for tangible actions. But the reality is that it costs us years as young people to even get that seat at the table. And when we finally have that seat at the table, then is when we're going to get these tangible results.
Are you giving them a seat at the table, Stientje?
Absolutely, yes. I think that's actually one of the commitments that the Netherlands makes today in the action statement, is to actually give them a seat at the table. And I can tell you that we have already started doing that. Past week, they were at the table at our national circular economy meeting that we have twice a year with all of the leading figures in all of the sectors. And we're trying to define what the next steps in policy should be. And I want young people to be there at the table, bringing innovative ideas, challenging us, because we need to go much faster and further. So we really need your bright ideas. And I think you are not doing yourself justice in saying that the concrete action or the concrete results will only be coming in a couple of years once you sit at the table, because the fact that you are there, that you are pushing across the world for circular economy to be integrated into, and sustainability broadly, to be integrated into national policies, that is results. That is generating results already. You are creating the awareness and you are also creating for politicians, let's say, the public support for taking bold measures. So don't underestimate yourselves and the results that you've already set by everything that you've already done, and my sincere congratulations on that.
I'm interested from a business entrepreneur's point of view. Let's say, Victor, these guys are getting politicians to listen to them. What about you? Do you struggle to get support from the more established senior business executives or banks or maybe even politicians? Are they listening to you?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we have a problem. I'm sure Ikenna, I'm sure you can relate with this. I see your name. Anyways, we have a problem with this in Africa generally. Let me speak about Nigeria, where the politicians are not necessarily interested in waste management. Actually, they don't have the budget for it. It's not a priority. Again, we're still dealing with healthcare, with childbirth issues, with education. Waste management is so down the priority list, right? And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But for us, we've been able to get a lot of joy in terms of corporates, right? And mostly international corporates, because a lot of them have again sustainable goals to achieve, and they recognize that by partnering with us, they can achieve those goals. So it's a win-win, those relationships. And unfortunately for the government, we haven't had those kind of interactions yet. Again, it's not just a priority for them right now.
Yeah. Celiwe, you've clearly booked some progress with this Green Fund. Has it already financed any projects, or there are some projects in the pipeline?
Yes, definitely. It has definitely financed a lot of projects. Unfortunately, the minister couldn't be here to speak on those projects that were financed by the Green Fund. But there's also been a lot of tangible work that we're also doing on our side with national climate policies. We're going to be currently launching the Johannesburg Youth Climate Action Plan. And this action plan basically speaks to the principles that young people want to see in the cities that they're currently in right now in South Africa. And some of the wonderful principles that we have on just the transition, they're on systematic change, they're also on intersectionality, because we believe in inclusive and representation of human lives, because climate change is the fight for us all. And the Joburg YCAP is going to be recently launched. It was after a lot of work communicating with our CC Council, and now we are going out to the national YCAP to ensure that every principle, or every young person in South Africa can envision the city they want to stay in, and that can be made possible through the national YCAP.
Okay. I see Shikhar nodding vigorously, but I understand, before I go to you, we have Ernest back. He might be frozen, but he can at least hear us. So I'd like to give you the opportunity, Ernest, just one more time, let's try it out, to just elaborate a bit more on the waste management business, Eazywaste, that you have. No. Oh, what a shame, what a shame, what a shame. Well, we wish you all the best regardless. So I'm sure Eazywaste will keep growing. Shikhar, what is it then, because I saw you nodding, what is it that, tell me something that you would like to happen, like concretely, as a young person, if you had the opportunity now to implement one policy of your own, what would that be?
So I think India's situation is different, as every country is and even every locality is. We are still in a state where we need to get the government to understand the need for youth involvement in policy making, and for it to be diverse and representative of India's tremendous diversity, and that's what we're really trying to do. Assuming, or rather wishing that we'll succeed on that endeavor, a tangible policy change that we want to see is the capacitation of young people on the ground to actually implement co-evolutionary approaches that combine the ecosystems of their regions, combine the traditional knowledge of the communities that they inhabit, but are also...
All of those things, like, just give me one thing, one particular initiative which will do all of those things. I don't know what it is. Installing public toilets in a particular way, or hand pumps with an entire system change which brings in the local community and works with grassroots organization. What would it be?
So I think living knowledge centers are something that have huge potential in India, because there's so much vernacular knowledge which can be used to solve, these disruptions from our ecosystems. So just more emphasis on empowering people, them then figuring out the solutions to their own local problems.
Okay.
So there's community, for example, South India, where they set up one of these systems and they figured out how to solve their water harvesting problems. They figured out how to become energy sovereign using, solar and hydropower, which they constructed on their own, just with some scientific expertise and local materials. They started having participative democracy assemblies where everyone was involved in decision making, and that just led to better decisions being made for everyone. So just empowering the grassroots is what needs to happen. And
very clear. Thank you very much. Before we continue, and I get the sense you'd like to reflect, but let's go to the iPad, because people have been asking questions. This question is for Aniek. Aniek, how is it possible that the youth worries more about climate change than older people?
I do understand that question, though. I think a very clear answer, because it is our future that we're deciding about. If we talk about the climate goals that we're setting right now for 2030 and even 2050, I plan on still being here at 2050, but I think a lot of the older generation might not be. So I naturally think that gives them a sense of maybe they don't care as much anymore, and I don't know if that is something that they'll be able to admit, but it is very tangible for us, because we know that in 20 years we'll be looking for a job. We'll probably be paying higher taxes because of all the belated climate action that we'll have to do in 10, 20 years. So those are very tangible results that will impact our future.
Yeah. Clear. Okay, and the next question is for you, Minister van Veldhoven. One of the participants, one of the audience members, would like to know if the involvement of youth in the policy cycle will be included in more areas related to climate. One of the viewers is happy to hear that youth will be involved in the policy cycle, but what about scientists? Okay,
well, so the link with scientists is also absolutely crucial, because we still have so many improvements to make in our economic system, So science, but also education is really, really key to driving all of this. So yes, I think it's crucial that we work with young people through science, through innovation. One great example, perhaps I thought, was we recently had in February we had a packathon where we invited young people to packathon to hack non-circular packaging. A packathon, and also we're working very actively with schools, also with the Ministry for Education, on bringing circularity into the education. Because if we don't educate people to think about the economy differently, then we will get the same solutions. Well, we need new solutions. So working with young people along this entire chain, designing for a circular world is, I think, absolutely crucial. And so involving young people in all of these elements is absolutely, absolutely key.
Okay. That's very clear. There is a young person that we've been desperate to involve, and he keeps dropping off because of his internet. But Ernest is back.
We're waiting for you, Ernest.
Ernest is back, folks. Come on, quickly, let's tell us. Elaborate. What does Eazywaste do?
Yeah, so Eazywaste is creating ground-up community recycling centers to give communities and individuals access to recycle their plastic package waste after they finish consuming their plastic package products. At Eazywaste, we believe that people are willing to recycle, but recycling centers were very hard to reach. So this makes them feel very reluctant in recycling. So we are virtually taking recycling closer to the people for them to be able to recycle.
And what are your hopes for Eazywaste? Like how big can you grow, and what's stopping you growing? What are the obstacles to your growth at the moment?
Yeah, so what we are doing is we are engaging community members to establish community recycling centers right within the communities, where we also process the recyclables right in the community for it to become a product that benefits everyone, whilst we also incentivize them to recycle more. So we at Eazywaste, we are looking forward to having much more hubs in much communities to bring this recycling culture closer to the people, and also for them to feel involved in the recycling chain.
Yeah, involving the community, involving consumers seems to be very key. Do you, Celiwe, what sorts of initiatives have you set up to raise awareness with respect to the circular economy?
Yeah, so
sorry, Ernest. I know you're desperate now that you're online, but I'm going to go to Celiwe with this one, okay? Hold on one second.
Thank you. So in our implementation plan for the city of Joburg, we have prioritized education and awareness raising. And we have done that because we believe that can be done through formal and informal education. So we have been also, creating, a curriculum also to be integrated into the school curriculum, so that climate change isn't something that's just taught in a module in geography for only, one period. But we want it to be something that young people understand, because we strongly believe that if you teach young people the importance of recycling, they can teach their parents.
That's it.
So that's where we wanted to start. But we also, cognizant of the fact that a lot of young people are outside of school. So we also want to work with those young people through workshops and training, and seeing what young people can do with their hands, entrepreneurship, giving young people green skills so that they could see the economic benefits in the circular economy. Because in a country like South Africa, it is very much impossible to try and introduce sustainable development or growth to people, and telling them that they need to take care of the resources they have now for the future, while they're still struggling, to get those resources for themselves, while they're still struggling to put, food on their tables.
Yeah.
So because of that, that's why in our implementation plan in the city of Joburg, we are asking the city of Joburg to work with SAIIA reclaimers. SAIIA reclaimers are the people that go around the city of Joburg collecting, recyclable materials and selling them for cash. We want the city of Joburg to put, dignity into that job, because those people save the city so much money, and we want to
Absolutely.
work with those people. We want to, dignify the job that they do, because they're doing an
Yeah.
amazing job, and that is just us, in raising awareness and educating people on climate change, formally and informally.
Okay, and Ernest then, raising awareness among consumers of the need to recycle. How does Eazywaste go about doing that? Who do you partner with?
Yeah, so in our communities that we operate, we have the availability of community centers who also operate this audio system. So we harness the opportunity to make regular announcements over there for people to be aware of the reasons why they should recycle. And at our end too, we are still continuing the old system of incentivizing the people to recycle for profit. So they have the zeal, the communities that we are working with have the zeal, and whenever they finish consuming their plastic packaged products, they bring them in for recycling, whilst we offer them incentives for bringing them in.
And further up the coast, Victor, your experiences of trying to raise awareness in Nigeria?
Yeah, so for us, we've been very focused on the the value out in this process. So again, it's been very from inception. The idea has been not to focus on recyclables, on the waste, is to focus on the resource from that waste. And so this is what we've again tried to do throughout our processes. And so in fact, the way we're scaling our modular centers across the country is through a franchising network that is run and operated by women. And so each of these centers can then again employ 15 people in the community, a woman run, and of course, each of them are powered by solar. So again, we have a full circular economy business for communities that empower people within communities and can be replicated because of the technology that we have in there. So again, we have technology like Internet of Things, computer vision to again collect data on there. So basically, the idea is really to focus on how can this create value in communities rather than just talking about waste management, because that is not very interesting.
Now, you had everyone nodding there, so everyone is in agreement. We're coming towards the end of the session. I'd love to know, sort of get a final reflection from everyone about how it's gone. We'll end with you, Stientje. Aniek, what do you think? What's your takeaway from what you've heard so far?
I think what we've heard so far has been super inspirational. I think young people in so many different ways show us that they're fully capable of being a serious stakeholder in the climate debate, in the circular economy debate. And I think something that we haven't really touched upon yet is the We Are Tomorrow Global Partnership. We write those vision documents, right? So each of the partners is closely working together with youth throughout the entire country to write a vision document that portrays a future that they want to work towards in 2050. And that is our way as a global partnership to show that we know what we want, and also that vision is co-created with youth throughout the entire country. And we are ready to go to our government and say, we want this. Please let us get that seat at the table and work with us, please. And I truly hope that people who have been watching, whether they work in government, in politics, or even in business, have been inspired by the young people that we have at the table today, and will, from now on, maybe try at least to engage young people in their own processes.
Okay. Anne-Lieke.
Yeah, I mean, it's just beautiful how you're working in the grassroots, because we're working with these communities in the most rural areas. So the problems you're talking about, I completely understand it. So it's really beautiful how you're sharing knowledge and providing these resources and focusing also on the positive messaging and to see actually the value of what you can create. So thank you for that. It's really
beautiful. Thank you. Shikhar?
I think for me, the importance of co-creating visions and making sure that people feel their voices heard is important, whether it's recycling, fashion, policies, changes that people want to make in general, because often everything is very top down, and that just removes the joy of living and of trying to make a better world. And so really hearing people out and making sure that they are able to act on the solutions that they know they can action. That's really key for that is a common thread that I see in everything there.
Thank you. Co-creating visions. Celiwe, what's your takeaway?
I think for me, the takeaway here would be that young people have to find their entry point in the climate change discourse. My entry point in the climate change discourse was when the first session I watched on climate change, it was old white men, and I just had a problem with why there are no black female young people in it. And that was my entry point. It was understanding that representation matter in climate change. And the young people can participate. You can participate through your poetry, through art, through creating handbags, using waste material, through recycling, and also through poetry. You can write a book. Just like myself, you can write up policies. Young people have to find their entry point in the climate change discourse, because we are the future that we envision, and we are the future of tomorrow. Therefore, we need to find our entry point until we fully penetrate, the climate change discourse. Thank you so much.
Now, passionately spoken. Thank you very much, Celiwe. Ernest.
Yeah, so it has been an insightful conversation, and I'm very proud of my colleagues who are also contributing their best so that we make sure the planet is safe for our young generation coming. I also pretty much excited about what governments are also doing so that in 2050, this generation, will not happen to be at the front of leadership, explaining to our younger generations why we couldn't mitigate against climate changes in 2050. So in 2050, we are looking forward to be able to tell our younger generation that this is what we did to mitigate the effect of climate change, and not to explain to them why we couldn't.
Okay, very clear. Thank you very much. Victor.
Thank you. I think this has been very inspirational, being with all these other people doing great stuff around the world. But just again, I think my final comment would really be about, again, since I have also a minister on the table, really just about, again, for government to continually think of policies that encourage circular economy. And again, in the case of European governments, there's been interventions directly in Africa. I am a product of one of those interventions through the Orange Corners program. They were literally the first company that invested in what we were doing, before anybody knew about it. Yeah. So, again, these direct interventions exist, and they help, put us closer to where we want to be. The other part of it is that, again, 75% of the, or 80% of the market for eco goods are in Europe and North America and China, right? It's not Africa. So whatever product I'm producing is for that European market. So we need access to markets, for the circular economy in Africa to take off.
Another very clearly stated takeaway. Stientje.
I could talk about this for 15 more minutes or more. Anyway, a few short
You have
points.
one.
Orange Corners, indeed. That's we try to help young entrepreneurs across Africa, the Middle East, and also with the Orange Corners Innovation Fund to really get them started. So great to hear, fantastic to hear that you find their help very helpful. I hope we can help many more.
But just to be clear, Orange Funds, it's something that all of our audience could look up.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's the Orange Corner Innovation Fund. So if you go to the Dutch embassies in your country, we have Orange Corners, and there is the Orange Corners Innovation Fund that helps to finance access to finance for startups. So we're trying to get grassroots movement off the ground. And I think that is also what's combined most of your interventions. Let's try to find where the local energy is, and that may be something different in every corner of the world. But if you try to energize that energy, then you can make most of the progress. Being modular is very, very important. Making it easy for people is very important. Making it profitable for many people is important. And as government, you can play a crucial role in trying to create that market, and also then, of course, to create market access to the European market, for example. We're also trying to share market information on how to export to Europe. So through our network of embassies, also we're trying to help getting you to that information. Getting a seat at the table, I'd like to call on all my colleagues and tell them, give them a seat at the table. What do you have to lose? You have everything to gain. You literally have a future to gain if you do that. And I very much loved your comment. I think all of us, in the end, have to evaluate if we have done all that we can. To avoid that in 20 or 30 years, we will have to see that we have not done enough. It's up to all of us now, in the responsibilities that we have now, to do all that we can. And let's all reflect on that every now and then.
Absolutely. Now, I'm really pleased that the connection problems sorted themselves out. Thank you very much to all of our panelists online and here in the studio. It's been really, it's been inspirational for sure. Okay, and thank you to everyone at home for joining us. Don't forget to watch Circularity TV on Channel 3 at 11 o'clock and check out the session on the end of use of electronics in the value chain, which starts on Channel 2 at 11:15. I'll see you again soon for the final session of the conference later today. Thanks, bye-bye.